Okay, can you hear me okay? Yep. All right, wonderful. Well, I appreciate you all joining us this afternoon. This is definitely a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and particularly in the Appalachian region of Ohio and nationally. So to just kind of get us started, I hope you are all able to follow along, and I hope let me see, there we go. Okay, so the first slide, and I'm not going to read this to you, just tells you a little bit about ACENet. We've been around for over 26 years. And the cornerstone of what we do is around the idea of business incubation. And I want to stress, as we start off, there is no one way to do business incubation. And you will hear me stress different things as we go through. Just to note to everyone, you know, what works in one community may not work in the exact same way in another. So we'll be talking about some different examples of that. So this just gives you a general idea. We currently operate two business incubators, and together it's about 130,000 square feet of incubation space. The cornerstone of our facility here in Athens is our food manufacturing center. We refer to it as the Food Venture Center, and it supports between 100 to 125 food businesses every year. And currently those are from 67 of Ohio's 88 counties, so as well as our bordering states. So we're just going to kind of jump into this. The way that I organize this seminar is to look at some key questions that you need to ask yourselves and your partners sitting around the table. And it's very important that you are really honest with yourselves and with each other. The first thing is just kind of an overview. What is an incubator? There are an infinite number of ways to describe this. We look at it as basically developing a support system and any resources that businesses may need. Now, the list that I have there, those are just some of the typical things that are available. For what we do in particular with with a focus on our Athens facility around food, that requires specific equipment, specific facilities. Business incubation does not require a structure. It really requires you don't have to own it. You may be able to come in partnership with a group of building owners. So really, as we're thinking about an incubator, I want you to think broader than what you might have seen on a university campus or what you would see even here at ACENet. And so we've also worked heavily with some of the Main Street programs looking at their downtowns as an incubator. So just kind of think broader as we're moving along. What we typically have looked at, though, as our bundle of services is looking at the counseling, facilities, equipment, office equipment, that type of thing, in addition to the food equipment. Mentors, networks, access to markets, absolutely enormous, and financing. We do run a small loan program through our sister organization called ACENet Ventures. The next question is the need and demand. We've had a lot of folks who contacted us who just decided, you know, an incubator seems like a good idea and maybe we need to do one. What's really critical is that you look at what is the need and the demand. And the question that we ask, and I throw the between the lines piece there, what value would your incubator offer, and have businesses expressed an interest in paying to utilize one? A lot of times folks will say, you know, would you use one? And folks say yes. And then the next question you need to ask is, so how much would you pay? And usually that starts to delineate those folks who are really serious from those folks who are just giving a quick response. And you have to have support from your leadership in your communities as well as the consumer market. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go. In our situation, we looked at and we continue to look at various elements. One of them are the trends. So for us, as we continue to look at scaling up our facility, we continue to look at our emphasis on the food manufacturing side, given these specific trends. And some of them may be true in your communities, and some of them may not. It just depends. The other thing that we looked at, and which was a catalyst actually for our incubator, was the Athens Farmers Market. The Athens Farmers Market has existed longer than ACENet has, and from this collection of what we would refer to as micro-enterprises, these entrepreneurs noted that they needed a way to do value added. So what we basically, it's a matter of looking in your own community and looking for opportunities or assets that already exist. So we've heard that from communities that have a strong artisan population, or folks who are doing, they have a lot of young people, maybe they're interested in technology. But don't underestimate the power of those small micro enterprises in impacting the larger economy. The other thing that we looked at was what would our community and the region support. A lot of our micro enterprises, when they're starting off, they are most of them are focused on a local market, and now we have folks who have moved from a local market and are actually now exporting into other countries. But most of our folks, when they start off and it's, I have a great idea, their initial contact point is in the local community. So one of the things we looked at is this idea of locavores, and some of you may be familiar with that. I believe there's some books out on it as well. But this idea of folks wanting to know more about the services and the products that they are purchasing, and doing it more on a local basis rather than, you know, some nameless larger entity. But we also have a lot of folks, when you think of the consumer group and thinking these different demographics, there are a lot of folks who are doing almost everything online. So, you know, we're coming upon the holiday season. That's really critical. But a lot of those things can be done anywhere. And if you're thinking of distribution points, you know, things of that nature, that might work well with your group. But just start to understand your local market and then work your way out. The other thing that we looked at as and continue to look at as we change and evolve in looking at the demand for our services and our incubation is looking at the civic investment and engagement. We came out of this local value related to local agriculture and food products, and so a lot of the folks that you see on this slide are directly connected with us in one way or another. But there's a lot of festivals and events that have actually come out of the work that ACENet has done, as well as our partners. We view festivals, you see the Paw Paw Festival and some of the others, as wonderful opportunities to incubate ideas. So again, you don't need a $3 million facility and then figure out, wow, this may not be working really well. There are things that you can do right now, and just changing your mindset that this isn't just a festival, this is an opportunity for folks to start test marketing their services or products. We highly encourage folks when they come to us and they're thinking of starting a food business to utilize the farmer's market for $150, you know, of overhead. You have a spot and you already have a marketplace where people are coming with the specific purpose of buying. So, so those are great opportunities as well. Another example that we did this year, we actually, over the past few years, have worked with Easton, and so we've actually, to try to get more folks to be familiar with our products and services in the Appalachian region, we actually had a farmer's market at Easton with local products. Again, people were coming with checkbooks in hand. They're looking at purchasing. We want them to start getting familiar with some of our products. We also had an opportunity to do that working with Easton with our artisans. So again, the access to markets makes it a great option. It also, again, helps them test their products and services in the larger arena. So you can kind of test the demands. The next piece is absolutely critical, and what we see is that if you don't have some traditional champions, it can make it very difficult. It doesn't mean that it won't work, but it can make life a lot easier. So one of the things that we have focused on and have continued to focus on is when we look at the need and the demand for our services and for the incubators that we currently have, we need to make sure we educate our potential champions and existing champions and elected officials and general bureaucrats to what we're doing, so they also understand the need and demand. And that never ends. We're getting ready for another election cycle, so it's been busy around here with new faces coming about. The other thing to bear in mind when you're looking at the need and demand is the leadership in the business community. Again, you're going to see a lot of things that focus on food here, but some of you may be familiar with Warren Taylor. He is a very big personality, and he collaborates with Bill Dix and Stacy Hall with their cattle, so to create dairy products. What we understand is that we need to be listening to our businesses, and one of the things that we as an incubator and the services that we are looking at is there is a need and a demand for a focus on policy. Now that could be local policy, it could be, in our case we work a lot on state policy, but it's important that you truly understand the deeper needs that your market has. And if your market in large part is the businesses themselves. The next slide, I want to point out I hope you can see my mouse here. In the center of the screen in the upper portion, there is an icon that says 30-mile meal. And I think this is really, again, very critical. And when we look at this idea of incubation, it's connecting our new businesses and as well as farmers to a larger market, and also helping our established businesses to thrive. So the way that the 30-mile meal works, and some of you may be familiar with it, it came out of this idea that we wanted to encourage more restaurants to be purchasing local products. So while that sounds easy enough, that's not necessarily a value that every restaurateur has. It's just as easy to call up, one of the big companies and have them drop a bunch of stuff off out of their semis. So the incentive here was around marketing and promotion, and so there was a campaign, and it was a collaboration between ACENet and the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau to develop a 30-mile meal program. So the logo was created, and then a massive amount of press was given to this, and collaborating with media. This has been going on for a year. We've done a multitude of national presentations on this already, and it has really taken a foothold. We have a lot of restaurants that are saying it's worth my while to accommodate utilizing more local products and services into my offerings, because I then can be part of this marketing campaign. So from some of the businesses like Casa Nueva and some of the other restaurants came to the table because this is a core value of what they do. Others came on later because they identified the economic value that it could have for their bottom line. So for us, it's just a matter of making sure, again, that we understand the needs of the businesses, the demands from the consumer side, whether that's the restaurants or the end consumer. And so we're very fortunate in the Athens area in particular to have a lot of folks who that piece is very, the buy local is very strong. All right, so the second question you need to pose in your community, are you going to target a specific business sector or group of sectors, or is the target market more general? And although we're focusing and we're talking a lot about food, we actually do a lot of things around this idea of multi-sectors and you may hear the term cluster. Our food folks do not act in a vacuum. What they do really needs broader support, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But if you're going to target a specific sector, you're going to have to know the unique expertise, the equipment, the facilities that you can offer that they may not already have access to. So for us, it's we have to reproduce our facility. Just the 11,000 square feet from our food facility would probably be a couple million. To reproduce the networks that we have with the expertise and the networks with grocery stores, I can't even imagine how much that would cost to reproduce. But given all of those things, that's a special niche that's been developed over 17 years. The key there is that you're committed to that sector, and so you better really make sure that you're prepared to go the long haul. If you are looking at something more general, which most of our facilities are, then it does provide a lot of flexibility. So some of the things that drove our decision was that we did have innovative farmers that were coming to the table. We also had food venture entrepreneurs, and I always like to note the DB Yummers. It's probably one of the best barbecue sauces I think that's come out of our facility. They're sold in your local Kroger's, I'm sure. We also had some very innovative folks, Snovo Creamery, where he was willing to put serious money on the line as well as take out some serious loan dollars to get a plant started. We had Frog Ranch, which had been with us from the beginning, so we knew it worked, so we've gained some traction. Integration Acres, which if you're not familiar, the pawpaw is our official native fruit, I believe, for Ohio now, largely because of Chris, who is standing up at the top of that slide with the cheese. Ancient Roots, again, looking at some of the local. Vino de Milo, who is our biggest expander in our markets and continues to push us to scale up. Shagbark, which was a mill, again, that kept expanding our market. So even though we had just been doing small-scale bottling, all of these folks pushed us to go larger. So even though we were looking at a specific sector, our specific sector was really a sliver of that sector. These folks pushed us to go even bigger. Casa Nueva, which actually came out of our ACENet's original entity, which is the worker-owner network. This is a worker-owned restaurant, and I think it's one of the oldest in the nation. And Village Bakery, and you can note how much they're purchasing in local product there. And again, they've invested in real estate. So this particular lady here in the lower left corner is actually Christine. She is the owner of the previous slide of Village Bakery. And she purchased that building. She also purchased the building next door, which is now Della Zona, which is a pizza place. And they are very focused on this idea of buying local. Avalanche Pizza, again, another example. But and what they've done is they've really targeted themselves that they're different from every other pizza place. They're different from every other bakery. They're different from every other restaurant because of this value added. So as you can tell, there were a lot of folks that were food related that really pushed us to that degree. But then there was, what are those auxiliary services that they need? We couldn't just focus on the specific business sector for a variety of reasons. And one of them was, you know, I mean, it's just like your portfolio for your 401k, diversify. So if something takes a dive, what's going to be your next option? So what we know is that our food folks need, they need graphic design services, they need websites, they need to take a look at retail outlets, and when you have a magnet of folks coming together around this cluster, other things spring up. One of the things that has happened very organically, and it was totally not intentional on our part, was the wellness sector. We had a couple of folks that were doing massage therapy. They got together, said, we could really do better by working together, developed a co-op, and now we are up to, I believe, about 15 wellness companies that are here on our Athens campus. For them, again, it's a matter of lowering overhead and increasing access to markets, and so they work together to draw in consumers. And they also have a shared infrastructure. So you can see Aaron and Michelle here at the bottom, who were the two folks who really got things going. Some of the other things that we looked at when we were looking at the specifics were the businesses that were already in the region, or in the area. So we have a Columbus Road Business Association that came up. You have to really just look at what are there may be opportunities that come down the line that you may be able to help a business get started. If you get too exclusive, you may miss out on opportunities to help your community and your region, as well as those entrepreneurs. Our Nelsonville facility was very different, and this was actually kind of predetermined when we purchased the facility, which is about 100,000 square feet. EdMap, which is located at the top of that slide, was already in the building, and they do distribution of educational materials. At one point, the University of Phoenix Online was one of their largest clients. So they were already in there, and so they then, are part of our network. We also looked to Hawking College, and because we needed anchor tenants to help get things going, and that is going to have consistent revenue. The last company that we have in there at this point in time, there's a couple others, is Roseweld, and it's one of our larger ones, and they do composite piping. So, and this was actually an example where they, a financing partner of ours brought them to us, and they needed unique space. Our building was actually one of the only ones that would fit the parameters for their manufacturing equipment. So, so again, we do not close the door on working with a diverse array of folks, although we're really well known for the food. The next question is where would you locate the incubator? Is it going to be a new location, existing site, or a group of sites? And just from our experience, we have 5 incubator buildings. All 5 incubator buildings, let me take that back. 3 or 4 of the 5 incubator buildings existed and were retrofitted after we purchased them. Only one of the buildings, and it's the smallest building on our Athens campus, was actually a new build. Our Nelsonville facility is in the heart of Nelsonville, and so it is a former distribution center for Rocky boots. And so that was an opportunity to take an empty, very large shell and repurpose it. There are advantages and disadvantages to each of those. So you just have to weigh what your situation is. The one thing that I would caution folks on is the idea of the infamous gift. We've heard from a lot of organizations that have been gifted a building and are going through the process of trying to figure out whether or not they want to take it. And most people will take a knee-jerk, oh, this is great, you've got a building, this is wonderful. But you really, again, need to think about what is the purpose, what is the use, and what is the condition of that asset. For the Nelsonville facility, for our clients who are already in there, EdMap in particular outgrew the facility pretty much within the first year that we owned it. And we as a nonprofit had to start trudging through to raise additional grant money to continue the repurposing. So we did about $175,000 of improvements the first go-round after the purchase. And now we're looking at $525,000 of additional improvements that need to be made to continue to retrofit that. And that should largely bring us up to par and create a flexible enough space. But think of the holistic package that you're going to have to do. We also know that there's lots and lots of old school buildings that are being given away, and people want to unload them. And in some cases there are issues with energy use and the expense related to all of those things. So just make sure that you truly understand what it is you're getting in for, yourself is in for, and really make sure that it's going to meet the needs of the community, and that, again, you have all of the support and you've really taken a look at your markets and the demands. And the other thing, again, incubation does not necessarily have to be, it's not the four walls that make an incubator, it is what happens inside it. Okay, sorry about that. So looking at our slide here, well, you can kind of get a sense of where we are. These are two buildings, building A and B on our Athens facility, on our Athens campus. And so those were opened in '91. We also have the food building. This was the last portion that was purchased in Athens. They're all on the same, on adjacent properties. And so we have gone through a lot of clients over the years. But we've done it in stages. The next facility that you'll see is the Nelsonville property that I referred to. And so again, just bear in mind, you may get caught like we did with a client like EdMap that went from having 6 employees to having 125, and our biggest issue is parking. So I never realized asphalt would become the cornerstone of my life, but here we are. Another thing to think about is the downtown, and looking at a cluster of business owners, property owners. And this, of course, is Nelsonville. We love Nelsonville. We're big, definitely big fans of this, and we have a lot of clients who are businesses downtown. One of the things that we look at, and one of the reasons that I joined the Heritage Ohio board, was to really look at this idea of downtown revitalization. Beyond saving the buildings, it's what's happening inside them. So there are downtown associations that have occurred, things of that nature. There are opportunities, again, to do this. The challenge here is, how do you generate revenue to be able to support the business counseling if you don't own the building or have some other revenue stream? And so we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm a huge proponent of community-based business incubation. Here's the ugly side. So once you decide that you want to do this incubator, you really need to be very clear on who's going to operate it and who's going to provide the services. And this requires all of that fun stuff, some of which is not the most exciting. Looking at collections. It's an issue. You're working with startups. Just anticipate you're going to have a problem and make sure you understand who's going to be the heavy. Touring. We have lots and lots of businesses that come through here. Maybe 1 in every 10 are actually a feasible tenant. Business counseling. It's not the space that we find is the challenge for our businesses. It's usually the fact that about 95% of everyone walking in the door has never been in business before, and they're a first-generation business owner. So they don't necessarily have the network of folks to go to ask for advice. So just be prepared for that. Custodial, wow, that looks odd. Did I spell that incorrectly? You know, I mean, I've taken out the trash. It doesn't matter what your title is. You just need to be willing to do whatever needs to be done. You need to deal with complaints. You need to deal with the media, as well as all of those other things just to keep the incubator running. The next question is, what services will you provide and who will provide them? This is the important thing is whenever you have somebody who comes in or calls your incubator, you need to be very clear what the expectations are of what you're going to provide and what the clients will provide. This is going to be those critical issues of, you know, do they have to give you financial statements at the end of the year? Make sure it's up front and make sure that it's in the lease. But you need to be very clear, do they have to meet with you? Do they need to engage in business counseling? And then also look at, you know, it's very expensive to do this, so how are you going to raise that revenue? Are you going to engage with volunteers or whomever? For us, the services, a lot of them, as you can see here, relate to the facilities and the infrastructure and around food. But we also, some of the services that we provide are not just sitting down with people and talking, but it's a matter of looking at some opportunities for market access. We've also developed branding strategies, and this is a website that we did a while back. Wow, this was back in '04, and it was when most artists did not have their own website. So we went ahead and did this website. Most of the artists got their feet wet, and most of them started their own websites, which was fantastic. And as the since the demand increased and the cost came down, so we actually ended up closing the website, but maintaining Art of Ohio as a general brand. And again, like as I mentioned, we used Art of Ohio to go into Easton. Another brand that we do, and we work very heavily with our local Krogers and others, is Food We Love. Again, this is kind of an umbrella that says these companies and these products are, they get the okay from ACENet. We've done the due diligence on them. They have everything they need. And so when they come in under this umbrella, it may be someone who's never had access to that specific market. So when you're thinking about these things, it may be, you know, you may have some other brands, and just thinking in your communities, you know, I always think of Nelsonville, and they have this wonderful Nelsonville Star Brick, you know, and other communities that have amazing brands that they also could connect to, and Hocking Hills and others. And it's along the same lines of as in Holmes County with anything that says the word Amish on it. People immediately associate it with quality. So thinking along those lines, are there opportunities that you can group together these businesses and provide a value added to them? So services aren't just business counseling. The other thing that is critical for our businesses and looking at incubation, the other service we provide is looking at networking and planning. Again, there are policies that may be impacting your businesses. You may be able to be an advocate for that. Also looking at collaborations that can help them engage in some larger markets and access additional resources. And again, more foodies. I think you can tell we like food. And just to kind of point out on this one piece, kind of the idea of incubation, the lady who is in the bottom left corner, her name is Shams. Shams is from Lebanon. She's lived in the U.S. for a while. She actually came to us. She started doing some catering, and at that point we had a shared use restaurant, for lack of a better word. She produced her meals in the commercial kitchen and then brought them up to the front and basically did catering. She rented the facility for 3 days a week, and another lady, I believe, who was doing Thai food, was renting it the other 2 for lunch. This gave her an opportunity to cut her teeth in developing a restaurant, understanding pricing, all of those issues. She later actually went on to locate in Vienna, West Virginia, which is close to her home. She's one of the few restaurants I know of that has started in the black, and she is immensely successful. Because she is there and she has such a strong following, she's located near the hospital, other businesses have started to locate there, and the owner of the building actually redid the entire front of that building and the neighboring building that he owned. But he needed a catalyst, and that's what she did. And it was very interesting. She was very soft-spoken when she first came here. We went down there for one of our Christmas parties for our staff, and she explained to me one day that, you know, with her brother, they were having a disagreement on how to run the business, and she pointed to the door and said, "My name is on the door, and I will make the decisions." So it was definitely a very big evolution from her, from when we first met her. So she is definitely one of our success stories. One of the other things to think about as we're looking at this is generating additional markets for your folks to get into. This happens to be around the EBT system, which, if you're not familiar with, is now the, it kind of looks like the credit card for food stamps. And so we worked with a farmer's market to be able to get them to accept food stamps, and they developed a system, and that encouraged another line of revenue to come into the farmers market participants' businesses. But again, part of the services that we provide are looking at how can we help them access new markets. If they don't make a profit, they will not survive. So we need to be in constant thought of that. This is kind of that get real moment. If you really need to think about if your incubator model is sustainable, or can it be in the very near future. Our Food Venture Center took 7 years to break even. So when you look at that, you better be really loving grant writing. And even now, we've gone from 25% of our overall revenue, which is self-generated, to 65% self-generated since 2006. We want that to continue to grow, but part of the challenge is, well, 2 things that I noted there. Get an anchor tenant, or even a couple anchor tenants if possible. People who are established, who say, look, this is beneficial for me to be there, and you can count on their checks every month. That is really critical. And I know you'll have some purists who will say, an incubator really needs to be all new folks. I'm here to tell you, if you put all your wagers on a large group of unknowns, you're really putting yourself out there. The other thing is having an anchor tenant acts as a mentor to the other businesses and will help you increase your capacity to be able to support them. Because most of the, and I always say, most of the important business counseling happens in hallway conversations. So don't underestimate, if you are going to purchase real estate and you're looking at this piece, you really need a tenant, an anchor tenant or tenants. For us, it's in Nelsonville, it is EdMap, hands down. Here on our Athens campus, we have a bakery, and we actually have 2 companies that use our facility on an ongoing basis for over the last 16 years. So, so we understand that incubation, although some folks will say 3 to 5 years they need to move out, you need to really think about, you know, can you have those anchor tenants to go for the long haul. And the other key here is the third point. Take the advice you give your businesses. If you are a nonprofit and you are telling them how they need to make money to be sustainable, you need to be taking that very same advice. If you are an incubator is not there to subsidize businesses. That is not your purpose. And if you do that, all you do is you create a very challenging situation where you are enabling businesses, in some cases, to engage in less than healthy business activity. Once they do decide to move out, or if you help them out, depending on the situation, they need to have all of those pieces into their budget. And if you're not doing that, that can be a challenge. We also do delineate between, again, many incubators will say, 3 to 5 years, you need to push the business out. We bear in mind that in our area, the infrastructure is oftentimes difficult depending on the type of space they need. And when we look at our Food Venture Center, we look at it as a shared use kitchen. We work with a lot of startups, and we do have some people who move on and create their own facilities, but what we know is that most people can't do that, and they typically would go to a co-packer, which means they would leave the region. So for us, it's a matter of scaling up and keeping those pieces. But looking at that, you really need to approach this as a business. And we've gone through a cultural change in our organization from being a social service organization that wants to make an impact socially to really thinking of ourselves as being a business development organization that the outcome of what we do impacts the social landscape. Competitors and partners. We are a nonprofit, but we have competitors both within the state of Ohio and nationally. And our competitors, there are private competitors. There are for-profits and nonprofits. We keep an eye on them. Next week I'm going to visit some of them. We have to understand what it is that they're providing and how what we do is different. And how we add value. But we also need to make sure that if you are inadvertently competing with your local landowners, we know that that is a very big issue, particularly if you're looking at downtown revitalization. If you're wanting to get their support, it's tough if you're going to turn around and subsidize people's rent. So what we have seen is that a lot of our for-profit partners that have facilities, they are already, implementing stepping stages for the rent and things of that nature, sometimes helping with some of the build out, that type of thing. So make sure that you truly understand who is working in this landscape that you're preparing to engage in. The other thing is looking at partners. Why recreate the wheel if you can partner? And so that's one of the things that we've been working with different organizations throughout Ohio and in other parts of the U.S. to look at, sharing back-end services or specific expertise when needed. So really think about all of those things. Here are some examples to kind of again, Athens Farmers Market, we do not get paid if people are using the Athens Farmers Market, but if people are doing prep to get ready to go to the Athens Farmers Market, that's wonderful. If they're doing some cooking or baking or things of that nature. What we understand is that we would rather have folks utilize the farmers market, and if their idea doesn't work, we don't invest our time and money in it. If they're not really serious about coming to the table and putting skin in the game. So it's really a great filter system for us. We also look to social entrepreneurs. CFI, which is Community Food Initiatives, is a big entity in our area. And so they, again, may be wonderful partners to really help get out that social value of what you do. Produce auction, again, we do not get paid when people utilize the produce auction, But what we understand is that this is oftentimes a secondary revenue stream for some of our farmers, and so we encourage them to look at that if they so desire. This happens to be the chef from Ohio University, and so we've developed partnerships with him in Chester Hill Produce Auction to take a look at utilizing local. Your traditional economic development folks, you got to get them on board, and in some cases they're difficult to get on the bandwagon, but it's important all the same. So this just kind of gives you a sense of, after we've gone through all of these different pieces, these are the 4 areas that we have really focused on: the training and technical assistance and the facilities. Capital services, you don't have to have a loan fund, but you really need partners at the table. Capacity building through product innovation, branding, and adoption of technology. So those are 4 things that we have focused on. There are other things that we engage in, particularly when it relates to policy. And so for us, again, this is kind of how our mix shakes out. And so you'll have that to refer to. But again, you really need those champions to come to the table. So we are big proponents of incubation, but we also understand you need to walk into this with your eyes wide open. Devin?
Thank you, Angie, and thank you everyone for attending today. We're going to give you a few minutes here to send in your questions if you have any. And we'd like to invite you to become members of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio exists to save the places that matter, build community, and help people live better. If you enjoyed today's webinar, you can visit our website at www.heritageohio.org and find information about becoming a member. Also, we have a few events coming up. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll be in Lebanon, Ohio for a volunteer management training. That is an opportunity available to everyone in the state. Also coming up on November 14th, we have our final tax credit workshop for the year. That'll be in Defiance, Ohio. And we have one more Main Street 101 coming up, and that'll be in Portsmouth, Ohio on December 6th. So we'll just give you a few more seconds here to type in some questions, and if there are no questions, we'll let you guys loose early today. Okay, Michael has a question on what is the budget for your incubator?
Our budget right now for our entire organization is around $900,000 a year, and so that ebbs and flows depending on if there's specific projects that we're working on that year. We'll have, like I said, an influx of money in 2012 because of the construction, but usually we're right around that $900,000 mark.
Thanks, Angie. We'll give you a few more seconds to type any additional ones in, and we'll let you guys go. Scott has a question on how did ACENet finance their facilities and buildings when they received them?
The key partners for us over the years have been USDA. They have some infrastructure money that we've utilized. We've also, our Nelsonville facility was a combination of EDA, so the Economic Development Administration, put in 60% of the funds. That was a $2.1 million project. The Ohio Department of Development put in, I believe it was about $450,000 through the CDBG fund, so the Community Development Block Grant dollars. We also had private foundations that put money in. ACENet put money in. And I'm trying to think of who else. Our Athens facility, though, largely has been USDA and through their rural development. But then we've also utilized money from, the ARC, so the Appalachian Regional Commission, and again through the state. So I'm not quite sure how everything will shake out now with the new state organization on the Department of Development and its transition. But we definitely have worked a lot with Karen Fabiano, who I know also sits on the Heritage Ohio board, to take a look at what options there are. So Karen is a absolutely wonderful resource. But CDBG dollars have also been used here on the Athens facility. One of the things that we've heard from folks when they're trying to start an incubator, in some cases we've actually heard of a couple instances where folks are working with community foundations, and the community foundations actually own the property and then they lease the property to the nonprofit. But there's been a whole variety of ways that people have done this. But funding these it's not the easiest thing, but you definitely need to try to develop that local match. And we work closely with our county commissioners on that as well.
Thanks, Angie. Ken has a question on staffing here. He'd like to know how many staff members you have to execute all this work.
What a horrible question. I'm kidding. We currently have, I want to say 9 staff, and that we look at as being about 2 people short of where we really optimally need to be. What we're looking at now is with the scaling up of our loan fund, we'll probably need 2 to 3 people just focusing on that, so we're trying to sort through that as it goes. We have been immensely fortunate to work with Hawking College. Their president happens to sit on our board, as well as Ohio University, and there's a member of their College of Business that sits on our board, to be able to access labor from the students with their projects along those lines, and class projects as well. That has been immensely important. The other thing that we have found is that our board members, we have reorganized our board, have a new board chair. They have brought an immense amount of capacity to our organization. So we have engaged with volunteers like we haven't before, and it's typically in more of a formalized setting. So yeah, so we are definitely tight on staff, but most of our staff time is focused on the most high-touch clients, which typically are our food clients. Our non-food clients are typically a bit more low-touch, and we have 2 gentlemen that are just focused on facilities, as you can imagine, with the equipment and the 130,000 square feet.
Thanks, Angie. We'll give you a couple more moments to send in your final questions. I'd also just like to point out, while you're sending those in, if there are any more, you'll be receiving 2 surveys for this webinar. For those of you that are familiar with our surveys, you'll be receiving, the first one is just an evaluation of today's webinar to see how things went for you and any ways we can improve. And there'll be a second one coming out a few days later where we're going to be evaluating how the webinars have gone for the year, and also asking you for any input for any future ideas for the coming year that you would like to see a webinar on coverage of that, and any advanced topics you'd like us to cover as well. I'm not seeing any more questions come in, so we're going to end the webinar today. And once again, we'd like to thank you for attending today. And Heritage Ohio would like to thank Angie and ACENet for doing this today. It was a great webinar. And our next webinar is going to be on December 7th, and we'll see you there.